Alright, well welcome to Goose Creek Fly Fishing. My name's Trent. Today we're going to tie the red ibis. And the red ibis is a fly that is in both Mary Orvis Marbury's book as well as her father's book, Fishing with the Fly. Both these books were published in the late 1800s, and this is by all accounts from those books, a very popular and productive fly. So we're going to get into the tie. So I'm just throwing on here, and this was a lake trout fly, and in the book it's a large fly. They talk about the size of it and being used with the for the trout. So I'll go ahead and start my thread. And I'm just going to run my thread back. Not quite touching wraps, but pretty close. Just going to come back, and I want to get my thread to hang right at the tip of the barb. Now I like all my flies to start at the tip of the barb. It keeps my flies consistent. It keeps everything kind of looking the same for me, and I like consistency in my flies. I think if they look nice, I have more confidence in them. That may or may not be true, but that's just how I feel about it. So I'm tying this up, and I may be tying it a little bit more dressy than it was at the time. I'm using silver twist, a medium silver twist for this. This is the tag. And tags at the time, when this fly was made, you'll see it on a lot of the older patterns, and it was functional. It looked nice, but it was also there to support the silver, or the silk or the floss that was used for the rest of the tag. So we're just gonna. This is a bend back eye hook, so I have a bit of a gap that I need to make up on my side of the shank. So I'm just moving this silver twist down to help make up that gap. So that being done, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use some some really nice yellow floss. I say that something's happened with my floss. It doesn't want to. There we go. So what I want to do with this floss is I'm going to take my thread back to where it just hangs right at the point of the hook. Let me see if I can adjust this, make this a little easier for you to see. There we go. So my thread's hanging right at the point, and what I want to do is that spot between where the tag stops and that point of that hook is all going to be this yellow floss. So I just start at this end, and I'm just going to make overlapping touching wraps. Oops, had a little bit of an issue there. Overlapping touching wraps as I go over. And I'll go down to where the tag is. Then once I get there, I can just make touching wraps and come back. And the other nice thing about when you take this light color yellow and you wrap it over the top of the yellow, like I just did, it comes out as a very bright yellow section on your fly. Where if you just tied it once over that black shank of the hook, or even just with this maroony red floss or thread I'm using, it would come back very dark. Let's take a look at it. Everything looks good. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the tail. Now the tail section on this fly is made up of slips of white, there we go, white and red goose shoulder feather. And you want the white to be on the bottom. You tie this. So I'm going to show you, and I talk about this a lot when I tie in my wings. I want to get them side by side, like so. Then I want to measure my tail against the shank of the hook. So that's about where I'm going to want it. So I just transfer that measurement from finger to finger. Now, instead of just setting this on the top of the hook and giving it a couple loose wraps and then to tie it in, what I watched another tyer do, and I've been doing it for years after I watched him, is he would separate these and put them on either side of the shank of the hook. So I'm essentially tying them on the side of the shank instead of on top of the shank, like so. And then I get that nice tail, that nice angle. Now, once I've got that done, you can always grab these sections if you want and work them gently to the top of the hook. So, alright, so the next thing we're going to do is let's tie in this ostrich herl for the butt section. I've seen some different pictures. Sometimes it looks like they're using peacock. Sometimes to me it looks like it's ostrich. I like ostrich. I have a lot of ostrich, so I'm using ostrich. Okay. Got one turn, two turns, three turns, and the fourth turn. Okay. I'm just going to back my thread up. Catch that ostrich again. There we go. Just like earlier, I talked about how I've got to make up some of this gap on this side where the bend back hook is. So I'm just going to take some of that ostrich up there as well to help make that up. Alright, the next thing we're going to tie in will be the rib. So I'm going to roll this over on its belly. Cut me off, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches of this tensile material. So I'm using a fairly thin tensile, and it's gold on one side and it's silver on the other. It's very popular. You can find it pretty well in any fly shop. The secret to tying this is whatever color you want to show on your fly is the color that you use to touch the shank of the hook. So I want silver to show, so I have silver down. I'm looking at gold as I tie this on. And I like to tie these on to the underside of my shank, as you can tell. So we get that tied on, and I'm just going to run my thread up to the front and get that kind of clipped out of the way in the back. So up front, I'm going to use a UNI-Floss for the body, and I'm using this wine-colored UNI-Floss, and I'm using it because the picture that's in Mary's book looks dark. Now I know there's a wet fly by the same name that's also in Mary's book. It's also in her father's book, Fishing with Fly. And that is an all red fly. Everything on it's red. This one, the picture I'm looking at, it looks darker. If you want to tie it in a bright red floss, you certainly can. It looks darker to me, so I'm making it darker in this fly. And in my example that I tied earlier, I think it looks really good. I like the way that floss looks, this color. So maybe this will become the Goose Creek variant. Who knows? So I'm working to keep this UNI-Floss flattened so I don't get any weird bumps that I may have to take my burnishing tool to flatten out. I can show it to you, show you how it works when I get done, even if I don't need to varnish this. And that is just the right amount of floss that I cut off. Very little waste there. Pure luck. So if I'd had some weird bumps, I have an agate varnisher, and you can just take it and you rub it on your wraps, and it helps flatten out any bumps, weird bumps you may have. If your bumps are real bad, you're probably gonna have to unwrap it and rewrap it, but they're just from the floss, you can do it that way. So next, let's put in the rib. We have we're going to put in 5 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to come around on that 6th wrap, which is okay, because that's going to get covered with the head and the throat. You'll never see it. So this, I want to wrap it, tie behind it, and then I want to wrap in front of it as well and kind of fold it back on itself. That'll help secure it. In case you do want to fish this fly, one trout tooth or salmon tooth catching that tensile could pull it right out. This will help secure it in place a little better. So the last 2 things we have to put on this fly is the wing and the throat, and they both come, originally they came from a red ibis, the bird. They're body feathers, and they're incredibly hard to get a hold of nowadays. So I'm using, basically, if you've watched my other videos, you've seen this before. This is the Indian saddle patch I have. It's red, it's very vibrant, and I'm using this for both the wings and the throat. So I have already removed my 2 feathers I want to use for the wing, and I have already kind of cleaned them up and got them manipulated the way I want them. So I want this wing to, it does not go to the tail, to the tip of the tail, but I just want it to go just a little beyond the bend of this hook. So I'm going to put the wing in like so and kind of measure it, and that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. So I'm going to give it a couple loose wraps, not putting a lot of tension to it, just to get it to sit so I can see how it's going to look. And that's the look I'm looking for. So now I'm just going to give it a couple more wraps with some more tension. And forward. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in the throat. So the throat is, let me put down here, is this portion here. It goes all the way around. It's almost a hackle. I guess we could just call it a wet fly hackle. But you can tell it goes, it just right to this butt section is where it's going to. So I prepare mine a little different than other people. I pulled out the feather off that patch. I kind of measured it to get my length. That's about what I want. And then what I like to do, and it's just for cleanliness of my tie, I'll strip all the barbels off one side of the quill. And then I pull everything down, pomade, and I'll cut in a little triangle up here. And that's where I'm going to tie, that's what I'm tying in up here at the head. So we'll just take this. I'm actually going to clip off some more of these shorter ones. I'm going to take this piece here and lay it down on at the head, or what will be the head of the fly. And now this, when you tie this portion in, you're going to want to give it some torque, and give it some pressure to hold. You might even want to hit it with some head cement if you want, because you're getting ready to put a little bit of pressure on it as you wrap. So I'm going to actually use a pair of hackle pliers for this, just because I got a lot going on and trying to film it. So here, and you can tell that bare quill is just coming in contact, so I know I'm getting a nice even wrap, and I can just keep going around, and I'm just making touching wraps side by side around the front, and I'm just moving towards the eye of the hook. And I'm going to use this whole feather because I measured, and I want that longer stuff definitely in this fly. So we're coming around, and that looks like it's about it. And don't worry if it doesn't look what you want right now, because a lot of that is going to be, you know, it's a webby wet fly at this point. So, and by wet I don't mean moisture. I mean the way it's just a webby fly. It's not a rooster feather. So I'm just making some loose wraps to hold, so I can get this hackle plier out of the way. And then I'm going to give some torque, a little more pressure. Now the next thing I want to do is we're going to clip off that quill. I like to wet my fingers a little bit, and I'm just going to pull everything back. And then this will give that swept back look to all those hackles that I just tied in. And take your time when you're doing this. You want to make, because you're really finishing your fly at this point. This will be the head. And you just want a nice small head. So we're here, everything's looking okay. You can pull some of these down, get those. You know, there's always time. You're probably always gonna have to mess with your wing at that point. And then the last to do is going to be to, tighten that up. The last thing we're going to do is go ahead and pull out the whip finish tool. This isn't a fishing fly, so I'm just going to hit it with 3 or 4 turns. Call it done. Clip. And then I'm going to finish this off, and I understand I'm tying a vintage fly pattern, and I'm going to finish it off with my most modern thing I'm probably going to use, which is Sally Jansen's Hard as Nails fingernail polish for the head. So there it is. There is the red ibis from Mary Orvis's book and her father's book, Fishing with Fly. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you give this fly a shot on your own. If you have any questions for me, please send them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to give you any assistance I can. And I hope to see you around the vise.